Welcome to But What If We Win with me, Zuri Horwitz. I ran for Congress in El Paso County, Colorado in 2026. Lost the, didn't get on the ballot by 10 votes. Still frustrated. But the biggest issue and the reason I ran was that Dems will most likely win the midterms, even with the Supreme Court overturning the Voting Rights Act, even with Virginia not being allowed to pass a new map by the Virginia Supreme Court, even though other states, mostly red states, have gerrymandered like insanity. And even if not, it's still important, if we can't win the 2026 midterms, that we have a plan when we get into power, because the issues are huge. You know, there is just a video going around talking about how when Europeans come to the United States, they use burner phones because they don't trust us. And that's not going to change with just flipping a seat. That's going to have to change with policy, with having consequences for people violating the Constitution. And yeah, it's an intense time. I was sick all week, so we're just going to go over the 80% agreement, which was put together based on 80% of people supporting all of these policies. And then we're also going to, I missed it in the last one, talk about Medicaid MCOs. And we're going to use the 80percentbill.com for the 80% bill, and then pnhp.org and kff.org for my Medicaid stuff. So only 3 sources this time around. Fingers crossed. All right. Thank you for bearing with me while I educate myself. So this first bill is a banning congressional stock trading. And I'm also going to talk about whether I agree with it, whether I don't. I want to say when it comes to the 80% bill, something that happens is people think, well, 80% of Americans agree with it, so we should definitely support it. And I think that's true most of the time, but sometimes I think the heart of why we agree with it is more important, and making sure that the policy addresses the issue that people are seeing, or also talking about the way that places like the Heritage Foundation have skewed results. So we'll get into it a little bit more. So ban congressional stock trading. That one, I think we can all agree that one is very, very clear. I think something that other people added and that we've gone over in other places is not just banning congressional stock trading, banning betting, banning crypto trading. Let's read the bill, just so, you know, if we can. A summary is in progress, so we won't be able to read it. Let's just see the text really quickly, see what it says. Restrictions on trade and ownership of covered investments. Yeah. All right, we're not going to go into it super insane, but yeah, I think when we get a summary, we'll get a summary. I'm not going to go in super depth. I should, but not here, right? All right, end forever wars. And that one is another one 80% of people support. The bill repeals specified authorizations for the use of military force against Iraq. I would also say Iran is important. And yeah, the Iraq resolution, repeal of authorization for use of military force against Iraq resolution of 2002. So yeah, there's a lot that we still need to repeal. Lifetime lobbying ban. Again, I ran against somebody who is a 10-year bank lobbyist. They are not barred from being in Congress, but I do find it interesting when corruption is one of the biggest issues in our country that they are running for Congress and people are supporting them. I mean, they also have $2 million, so it makes it a lot easier for them to make the case for themselves. And when you guess, why do they have so much money? I wonder if it's tied to them being a lobbyist. But yeah, at least former members of Congress are banned for life from becoming registered lobbyists. Then there's also tax the ultra wealthy. This is what I wanted to really look at, because I wanted to see what the bill said, because, you know, what does that Billionaire Minimum Income Tax Act. The bill imposes a minimum tax on individual taxpayers whose net worth for the taxable year exceeds $100 million. The tax is equivalent to 25% of the sum of a taxpayer's taxable income plus net unrealized gains for the taxable year. The tax may not exceed 40% of the amount by which the taxpayer's net worth exceeds $100 million, which is insane. I mean, if you can't live on $100 million, you have a personality defect. I mean, I would just say whenever somebody has even over $10 million, I'm like, that's like announcing that you have a huge personality disorder, and like not a fun one. You're like not a fun person when your like personality disorder is just, I want to accumulate wealth. Anyway, yeah, I support that one. Ban corporate PACs. So what? Prohibit for-profit corporations from forming political action committees. All right, let's look at the bill summary. The bill prohibits for-profit corporations from establishing or operating a separate segregated political fund, commonly known as a political action committee or PAC. Existing funds must terminate no later than 1 year after the date of enactment of this bill. It also talked about how this legislation includes a severability clause if the Supreme Court strikes down this specific ban. The rest of the 80% bill remains law. This is the issue, though, and why we do need a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United, is the Supreme Court, and also an argument for completely cleaning house with the Supreme Court. When you can't trust the Supreme Court to rule based on the law, when Congress can't pass a law because the Supreme Court will do whatever it wants, you need to clean house with the Supreme Court, and you need a constitutional amendment. And I also just think it's really important that we very clearly clarify that a corporation is not a person. Like, there's just no, only so much you can do with this kind of thing. Yeah. Audit the Pentagon. The Pentagon has never passed an audit, require a full independent audit to root out waste and fraud. I have talked to people in the military, and a lot of them say that it's because there are super secret missions that cannot be shared, and so not all the money can be accounted for that way. I mean, I think that clarifying what those are might be better. This requires defense spending reductions during any fiscal year after F1 2022, I assume that's federal year 2022, where the comptroller of the Department of Defense fails to certify that a department, agency, or other element of DoD has achieved an unqualified opinion on its full financial statements. The amount of any reduction must be deposited in the Treasury and must be available for deficit reduction. The bill excludes from any reduction accounts related to military personnel, reserve personnel, National Guard personnel, and the Defense Health Program. The President may waive a reduction if the President certifies that a reduction would negatively affect one, national security, or members of the armed forces who are deployed in combat zones, or the Defense Health Program account. Yeah, okay, waive a reduction, okay. I mean, I think you can pass an audit, man. It doesn't have to get out, but there should be an auditor that's able to go through and say where this money's going. That's my take. The next one is Medicare drug negotiation. Expands negotiation to 50 drugs a year and applies lower prices to private insurance. Closes the orphan drug loophole. This entry combines two bills to protect all Americans, not just seniors, and stop Big Pharma from gaming the rare disease system. Let's go read the summary. The bill expands the Medicare drug pricing negotiation program to include additional drugs and drugs that are covered under private insurance. It also extends certain rebate requirements for covered drugs under Medicare to drugs that are covered under private insurance. Current law requires the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, to negotiate maximum prices for brand name drugs that do not have other generic equivalents, and that accounts for the greatest Medicare spending. The CMS must eventually negotiate the prices of 20 drugs that are covered under Medicare in 2029 and each year thereafter. I believe all drugs should fall under this, and also all services. so that we have standardized services and standardized drugs in this country, and we're not getting the surprise bills, and we're not finding out after getting a test that we owe $800. Personal experience. I'm not taking a test because I'm worried it could not be covered, but I'm not able to access that test because I have to talk to AI to find out whether it's covered, and I don't trust that AI will tell me, and I also don't want to give AI my information. Yeah. The bill requires the CMS to negotiate the prices of 50 drugs beginning in 2029. It also applies the negotiated maximum prices under the program to drugs that are covered under private health insurance, unless the insurer opts out. The CMS, the Department of Labor, and the Department of Treasury must publish a list of insurers that choose to opt out. Insurers must also publicly disclose their decision to opt out. Current law also requires, which is very interesting because so often they are also pharmacies, so they might want to opt out so they get more profits. Current law also requires drug manufacturers to issue rebates to the CMS for brand name drugs without generic equivalents under Medicaid that cost $100 or more per year per individual and for which prices increase faster than inflation. The bill extends these requirements to drugs that are covered under private insurance. Another pretty good one. I still think everything it just should all be negotiated. Fair elections and end gerrymandering. Pass the Freedom to Vote Act to ban partisan gerrymandering and the John Lewis Act to restore the Voting Rights Act. And didn't we agree with this one already? Let's read it out loud again. The bill, Freedom to Vote, addresses voter registration and voting access, election integrity, and security, redistricting, campaign finance, and voting rights. Specifically, the bill expands voter registration, automatic and same day, and voting access, vote by mail and early mail. It also limits removing voters from voter rolls. Again, we can always repeat stuff because I forget, and I know you probably do too. The bill establishes Election Day as a federal holiday. Again, I think that if you have mail-in voting, you should also be allowed to use a personal day off from between ballots dropping to election days so that there's less burden on businesses and people can use the day as the most important day. But, whatever, especially for people in healthcare. The bill establishes certain federal criminal offenses related to voting. In particular, the bill establishes a new criminal offense for conduct or attempted conduct to corrupt, hinder, interfere with, or prevent another person from registering to vote or helping someone to register to vote. Additionally, the bill sets forth provisions related to election security, including by requiring states to conduct post-election audits for federal elections. The bill outlines criteria for congressional redistricting and generally prohibits mid-decade redistricting. And I don't think we did freedom to vote as much as we did the For the People Act. The bill addresses campaign finance, including by expanding the prohibition on campaign spending by foreign nationals, and establishes an alternative campaign funding system for certain federal offices. Next, the bill establishes a new criteria for determining which states and political subdivisions must obtain pre-clearance before changes to voting practices may take effect. Pre-clearance is the process of receiving pre-approval from the Department of Justice or the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia before making legal changes that would affect voting rights. The bill also includes provisions related to federally protected activities at polling places and voting access on tribal lands. So, pretty freaking awesome. Again, requires a Supreme Court operating in good faith that is constitutional, which we do not have currently. Okay, protect U.S. farmland. This is one that I don't know as well. Ban adversarial foreign government from buying American farmland, including a beneficial owner registry to stop shell companies. I am for this on its face. I just don't know as much about it. So, Protecting American Agriculture from Foreign Adversaries Act of 2024. This bill makes changes to the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, including requiring CFIUS to determine whether a national security review is necessary for reportable agricultural land transactions. They are referred by the Department of Agriculture, USDA. CFIUS oversees the national security risks of foreign investments in the U.S., has the authority to review covered transactions, which include mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers that could result in foreign control of a U.S. business. Certain investments in businesses involved in critical technologies, critical infrastructure, or sensitive personal data, and certain real estate transactions. Specifically, the bill directs CFIUS to, after receiving notifications from from USDA determine whether a reportable agricultural land transaction is a covered transaction and whether CFIUS should initiate. Let me see. Okay. Certain investments in businesses okay, no, I went to a different, should initiate a national security review or take another action with respect to the transaction. If you're hearing sounds, it's a doggy. Reportable agricultural land transaction means a transaction that USDA has reason to believe is a covered transaction. 2, that involves acquisition of an interest in agricultural land by a foreign person of China, North Korea, Russia, or Iran. Okay. With respect to which a foreign person is required to submit a report to USDA regarding their agricultural land transactions. This bill also expands the membership of CFIUS to include the Secretary of Agriculture on covered transactions that include agricultural land, agricultural biotechnology, or the agricultural industry, agricultural transportation, storage, and processing. I think this can be good. I think it shouldn't just be based on these countries, but any country that's like seeking to monopolize. But I don't know. I don't know enough about this one. Sorry, guys. I'm still a little sick. Ban corporate purchase of single-family homes. Impose a massive tax penalty on corporations buying existing homes, making it unprofitable. Explicitly allow them to build new rental homes to increase supply. This uses an excise tax, not a ban, to bypass the takings clause and forces hedge funds to sell existing homes over 10 years. Cool. Not against that. Sorry I'm reading all the bills, but it's good to see them. The bill imposes an excise tax on hedge fund taxpayers that own a certain number of single-family residences in excess of a specified amount. The bill establishes the Housing Down Payment Trust Fund, in which tax revenues from this bill shall be deposited to provide grants for down payment assistance to taxpayers purchasing a single-family residency. This seems very simple. I wish it would also go to just building not single-family homes, but to building affordable housing. And let's see how much the number is. That's what I wanted to look for in here. Okay, there is hereby imposed a tax on the acquisition of any newly acquired single-family residence equal to 50% of the fair market value of such a residence. So excess of them, $50,000, and the excess of the single-family home. But yeah, I guess the sum of 50 homes is what I'm looking at, but I could be wrong. There's like a big table with a lot on it. You can find the bill through the 80% bill website. We're not going to go into it that much. Fund Social Security, lift the caps on wages, and tax investment income for earners over $400K. Prevents billionaires from dodging the tax by taking stock instead of salary. Ooh. Yes, with my whole body, I support this. The bill increases funding for the Social Security and Medicare trust funds by extending the payroll taxes on wages, self-employment income, and investment income to taxpayers with earnings exceeding $400,000. The bill also applies a payroll tax on pass-through income, business income of taxpayers earning more than $400,000, thus eliminating the classification of earned income as distributed business profits. Ooh, yes, absolutely support. This is one where I'm not as supportive. I don't care. Police body cameras. Mandate cameras for federal officers and cuts fundings to states that don't comply includes a presumption of release clause, so police can't hide footage. I'm great for them not hiding footage. But what we saw with Alex Preddy is that we had 4 different versions. It did not stop them from acting with impunity. I think that when they're sued, when police departments are sued, it needs to come out of their budget. I'm sorry, if you can't conduct yourself well, then you don't deserve that funding. And I also believe that a lot of the issue we have with policing in this country is that they're doing stuff they shouldn't be doing. Police are here to arrest people. Police are here to solve crimes. We need other people to be de-escalating. We need other people to come in before things get to a crazy place. We need a social safety net so people are less chaotic. We will do something on public safety, and I do need to do more research, always. But body cams aren't the answer. We have so many cameras. We have Flock. We have everything. We are overly watched. All right, this is taking longer than I thought. Let's keep going. Ban dark money, overturn Citizens United. A provision to overturn Citizens United and ban corporate dark money requires a 2/3 vote to survive the Supreme Court. This clause overturns Citizens United, but we acknowledge it will be struck down by the court unless this bill passes with the votes required to amend the Constitution. Absolutely agree. Yes. Let's read the bill. So I've read it, it's in my head, and hopefully you've heard it. This joint resolution proposes a constitutional amendment providing that the rights protected and extended by the Constitution are the rights of natural persons only. I mean, this is insane, that we have to say this out loud. Artificial entities such as corporations shall have no rights under the Constitution and are subject to regulation. The idea that this is even a question. The amendment requires federal, state, and local governments to regulate, limit, or prohibit election contributions and expenditures, including a candidate's own contributions and expenditures, to ensure equal access of citizens to the political process regardless of economic status. Oh, beautiful. Require that any permissible contributions and expenditures be publicly disclosed. Additionally, the judiciary is prohibited from construing the spending of money to influence elections to be speech under the First Amendment. Thank you. All right, another great one, paid family leave. Guarantees 12 weeks of paid leave funded by a payroll insurance fund. Explicitly prohibits firing workers of any company size for taking this leave. Sorry, this is pretty heartening. This is pretty darn heartening. Release the Epstein files. Mandates the full unredacted release of all documents, including those hidden by previous partial releases. While some files were they've done a very, very good job with this. While some files were released in late 2025, many names were redacted. This resolution demands the immediate release of all documents without hiding names, except of the victims, you guys, except of the victims. Summary is in progress, so we can't read it. This is the Disclose Act. This is one that, it's kind of not my favorite one. It requires immediate disclosure of donors, 10K plus, and includes the traceback rule to follow money through shell companies to the original source. Oftentimes, even when they're reporting this, it can be within 3 months. So let's see what the bill says. This bill addresses campaign finance, including by expanding the prohibition on campaign spending by foreign nationals, requires additional disclosures of campaign expenditures, and requiring additional disclosures regarding certain political advertisements. Specifically, the bill expands existing foreign money prohibitions to include disbursements for paid web-based or digital communication. All good. Definitely do that. And federal judicial nomination communications. It also prohibits foreign nationals from contributing to campaigns related to ballot initiatives and referenda. The Government Accountability Office must, for each 4-year cycle, study and report on the incidences of illicit foreign money in federal elections. Next, the bill makes it unlawful to establish or use a corporation, company, or other entity with the intent to conceal an election contribution or donation by a foreign national. A violator is subject to criminal penalties, a fine, a prison term of up to 5 years, or both. Covered organizations, corporations, labor organizations, and political organizations must, within 24 hours, file reports with the FEC to disclose campaign expenditures of more than $10,000 during an election cycle. This bill also requires organizations to provide additional disclosures regarding political advertisement, including the donors who contributed the most money to that organization in the last year. Actually, I really like that it's within 24 hours. My fear about that bill was that it would be in 3 months, which we have to file FEC filings as a candidate every 3 months. So somebody can say, oh, I'm not taking these contributions, and then take contributions for 3 months. All right. Another great one, right to repair. Ban parts pairing. Guarantees access to parts manuals for cars and electronics. I also believe it explicitly bans software pairing that blocks genuine third-party repairs. This entry combines the Automotive Repair Act with the Fair Repair Act standards to stop companies from using software to kill independent repair. This should also extend to, let's see where it extends, but to farm equipment and to our appliances. This bill requires a motor vehicle manufacturer to provide a vehicle owner certain direct real-time in-vehicle data generated by the operation of that vehicle that is related to diagnostic, repair, service, wear, and calibration or recalibration of parts and systems of the vehicle. Specifically, a vehicle manufacturer may not impair an owner's access to such vehicle-generated data or impair an aftermarket parts manufacturer from producing or offering compatible aftermarket parts. A manufacturer also must make available to the vehicle's owner and designees vehicle-generated data through a standardized access platform. Outside of recall and warranty repairs, a manufacturer may not mandate that the use of a particular brand or manufacturer of parts, tools, or equipment. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration must issue standards for access to vehicle data through the standardized access platform. The Federal Trade Commission must establish an advisory committee to provide recommendations on the implementation of this bill, assess and report on existing emerging barriers to vehicle repair. Okay, so this is just the vehicle repair one. This is not sharing the electronics repair. There's a lot that happens, planned obsolescence, planning for a washing machine, a dryer to break, or a phone to break, or a phone to slow down when there's a new update. We produce so much waste and it costs so much money to repair our electronics. It's like I have a washing machine from like the 90s or the 80s and it works better than new washing machines, and that's pathetic. All right. Ban junk fees, requires all-in pricing disclosures for travel, ticket, and utilities, prohibits companies from raising the price, dynamic pricing, once it is shown to the consumer. I'm all for it. Let's see. And this has been very thoughtful thus far. I'm really excited. Short-term lodging. Okay, mobile services, video programming. I think it should also, include food, include everything. I think that if you are getting a price, it should include taxes as well. That is something we can talk about in a future episode. They have been really thoughtful here, and I'm really impressed. So the next one is congressional term limits. Again, I think a lot of what we have problems with and not being able to get people out is that we have people who are here because of big money. I am against congressional term limits because what often happens, especially if you don't have limits on lobbyists, is that the lobbyists become the people with the internal knowledge. And so again, I would be against this one, limiting representatives to 3 terms and senators to 2 terms. I could see limiting senators to 2 terms because they're there for 12 years. I would personally say 3 terms. I know that's a lot. And I would say representatives 8 terms. I know that's a lot, but I think it's like the upper limits that are the real problem. I also think we need to have age limits. Over 75, you can become a really wonderful member of society. But at a certain point, we have limits, lower limits to become a congressperson, which is I think 25, something like that. And upper limits at 75, We're not having toddlers in there. We're not having people in there who, I don't think we can test all the time, but yeah. All right, let's get to comprehensive data privacy. Implement a comprehensive data privacy framework modeled directly after the GDPR to protect consumer data across the European Union. The bill has currently been proposed in Congress that would put the U.S. on par with European privacy standards established with the GDPR. If a bill like this arises, we will opt for including that. So there isn't a bill for it. And I haven't heard the best stuff. We are going to have to do an AI and a data privacy bill. I have a lot of concerns in terms of when we're banning kids from social media, that means that we're checking all adults and all children. And so we're giving a lot of data to tech companies that have already shown that they're terrible with data. All right. Veterans Care Choices codifies the right to private care, but mandates strict network adequacy standards so doctors actually accept the coverage. Cuts the red tape on pre-authorization. Okay, improving veterans' access to the healthcare was removed from our platform because the bill we were supporting has already successfully passed and signed into law. This one I'm interested in because, addresses various programs, benefits and services provided by the Department of Veterans Affairs. So, among other elements, the bill modifies the administration of the Veterans Community Care Program. So it's letting veterans go into the community for private care, but the issue is that we don't necessarily have limits on the costs for private care. So the VA works a lot more efficiently than private care does, considering that our healthcare system costs twice as much as more heavily regulated universal healthcare systems in other countries. We aren't increasing the funding for this, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. Provides certain support for family caregivers, modifies the administration of certain educational assistance programs. Expands the Native American Direct Loan Program for mortgage loans, requires the VA to provide a burial and funeral allowance for certain veterans who die prior to 2026 in home or other settings, temporarily increases the maximum rate of per diem payments provided by the VA to entities that furnish services and transitional housing to homeless veterans, authorizes a program to modernize the electronic health record and other relevant health information technology systems of the VA, and addresses various oversight and reporting matters. Again, that's great to allow veterans to have more options, but are we funding this? And are we regulating those private options so that they're not going crazy in terms of costs? All right, that was the 80% bill. I think it's pretty awesome. They put it together really well. 21 bills that 80% plus of Americans support. Really great job putting it together. I wish they had a little more info about who they were, and I know I found it online through a guy's Instagram, but really, really great. Just very nicely done. So, yeah. All right. Now we will talk about Medicaid MCOs. I know. Very exciting. So we're going to go to this article called 10 Things to Know About Medicaid Managed Care. So Medicaid Managed Care showed that 78% of Medicaid beneficiaries were enrolled in comprehensive managed care organizations. It's the dominant way. 42 states, including DC, contract with comprehensive risk managed care plans. And they also account for half of Medicaid spending. The other way that people have their managed care plans are, let me find it, are PCCM programs, so they're primary care case management programs. So lots of limited info. They're at least 40%. Let's look. Children and adults are groups most likely to be enrolled in MCOs. That seems like everyone. Only 5 publicly traded firms account for almost half of MCO enrollment, which a bit of a monopoly. So as of July 2024, a total of 15 firms operated Medicaid MCOs in 2 or more states, and these firms accounted for over 62% of enrollment in 2024. Of the 15 firms, 6 are publicly traded for-profit firms, while remaining 9 are nonprofits. The 5 firms are Centene, United Healthcare Group, Elevance, formerly Anthem, Molina, and Aetna CVS, which are also huge health insurance companies. So, take them with a grain of salt when you think about whatever they're doing and whether it's out of the kindness of their heart. I don't ever trust a health insurance company to be trying to provide health care when their goal is profits. States make decisions about which services to carve in and out of MCO contracts. Although MCOs provide comprehensive services to beneficiaries, the states decide. So dental, non-emergency, medical, transplant, and behavioral health are usually carved out. All right. Sorry, we're just getting the background, and thanks for watching. Read the article. It's a good article. Okay. I'll read this. Among enrollees in comprehensive MCOs, over 2/3 were also enrolled in a limited benefit plan and or received services through FFS. Over half of enrollees in comprehensive MCO and any limited benefit plan were enrolled in a dental plan. I also think it's really important, as we talk about this and we see how complicated government is, that it's never set it and forget it. It's never, we're just going to put this policy in place and it'll be fine. We have to keep our oversight on it, especially with healthcare. Because look at how complicated this is. We did a really quick overview of Medicare Advantage, and now we're going into MCOs, and it's so complicated. Each year, states develop MCO capitation rates that must be actuarially sound and may include risk mitigation strategies. Making sure that payments are not too high or low, including risk-sharing arrangements, risk and acuity adjustments, or medical loss ratios. Okay. So this is kind of like, this isn't like against MCOs. I am going to go into a document that is. Most MCO states always require remittance payments when an MCO does not meet minimum medical loss ratio requirements. The average medical loss ratio for the Medicaid managed care market increased from 88% in 2023 to 91% in 2024. Don't understand it. Don't understand that yet. Nope. Let's see what. Yeah. Thank you for being along with me. Changes to federal state directed payment rules may impact provider payments. Yeah. Okay. CMS finalized rules to strengthen access standards, but the future of the rules is uncertain. The Biden administration finalized major Medicaid regulations designed to promote quality of care and advance access to Medicaid enrollees, but of course, with Trump in office, CMS also finalized a rule focused on improving the prior authorization process, including reducing approval waiting times and improving transparency. So a 2023 OIG report found that Medicaid MCOs had an overall prior authorization denial rate of 12.5%, more than 2 times higher than the Medicaid Advantage rate, raising concerns about prior authorization and access in Medicaid managed care. Yeah, so we'll see. That's not good. And while health insurers are increasingly using AI to automate parts of prior authorization process, there is limited information available about its use and impact within Medicaid managed care. I really dislike AI. Unsurprising for me. All right. In recent years, CMS has taken steps to improve managed care program monitoring and transparency, having like reporting requirements for states in 2016, developed a standard reporting template and a variety of toolkits, and released a series of informational bulletins. Yeah, which I think is good. Anything that makes it clear why things were approved and not. All right, let's go look at why people are against this. I'm so fun. The project uses, okay. Yeah, basically it's saying that clinicians should decide whether something is needed. 45% of physicians often or always felt unable to provide the best possible care, and 68% experienced moderate or severe distress as a result. This is from PNHP. This is against MCOs. Physicians also described how financialized healthcare compounds systemic racism and inequity, with 57 reporting moderate or severe distress related to systems that fail to treat vulnerable patients with dignity. Ultimately, to safeguard the future of American healthcare, a publicly funded single-payer universal healthcare program is required. Implementing such a system would ensure that care is organized around medical need rather than profit, and that current barriers to such care as co-payments, deductibles, prior authorization, and medical debt would become relics of the past. I, again, am supportive of co-payments and like sliding scale for these kinds of things. I think it's good for people to be slightly invested, but just not as a financial burden that is so heavy that it would stop you from having care. So this is a very in-depth thing. We're not going to get into everything because it's just too big. But I want to go into a little bit, like they have a study design, and it was mostly like looking into physicians, and it was a survey using a non-random multimodal recruitment approach rather than probability-based sampling. They had 1,886 individuals complete it. 1,330 were board eligible or board certified. Yeah, so I mean, it's a study. They're saying basically like this, again, when it's not in the physician's hands to decide the care, it's a problem. They also have an Oregon case study that they share. And I could definitely see that. When other people are telling the physician what they can and cannot cover, that's a huge problem. And like, that's like with my doctor. They're a doctor, they know me. They decided that they would like a much easier test to give me, but because I have United Healthcare, they may not cover, and it's not even easy to tell, they may not cover that test that my physician thinks is a good idea. So yeah. All right, that's enough for today. We just barely went over MCOs, but thank you for dealing with me. And I'm happy to have gotten a little bit more of an understanding. It is a lot. They have a lot of studies in here. They have a lot of info in here. And you can, there's a one page that kind of talks about Medicaid is a joint federal and state health insurance program. It insures 71 million people. We're close to a $1 trillion being slashed because of the 2025 bill from Medicaid. States that rely on corporations like Cigna and United Healthcare to administer their Medicaid programs can substantially offset federal cuts if they stop using these middlemen and instead directly administer benefits. We estimate that if states shifted to direct payment of Medicaid providers, they could reduce their Medicaid expenditures by up to $34 billion per year. Savings stem from reduced administrative costs and improved care coordination. So that's the thing against it. Anyway, thank you for your time. Let's keep talking. And let's keep going. All right, we'll keep learning. If you have any really great resources, any topics you want me to cover, we will most likely get to it, but tell me so that I don't miss it. All right, bye-bye.